Hi, everybody. I'm PJ Trudeau. Welcome to the HR Roundtable, our recruiting. Certainly very happy today to have with us Staffing Advisors, who has graciously come back to be able to answer any questions that you have on anything recruiting related. We all know there's quite a lot going on in this area right now, and any advice, suggestions have been so very helpful that we've seen at the roundtable overall. But to be able to ask a firm that does this all the time. I feel like kind of in HR, we're all doing it now all the time, but to be able to ask the questions that we're not quite sure those answers to, or to get some additional suggestions or ideas, or why we had asked if staffing advisors would kind of come back and really talk with us just about those things that we're really finding challenging. And if you have some jobs that you're having difficulty getting candidates for, some questions about, certainly feel free. Very open forum. I am recording the session so that I can post it for those that weren't able to make it. We had lots of great tips and tools from the last session we had. I want to make sure that I'll provide a summary of all of those. If you have questions, certainly put those in the Zoom chat, or just ask. Whatever works for you. I'm going to stop talking now and kind of turn it over to Bob or Brooke, whomever it would like to chat to see what kind of questions you have to kind of get the group started.
Hey everybody, thanks for letting us back into your party. We have zero agenda. We're just here to answer questions. If you want us to take a look at jobs, what we found is the last time you all shared some jobs, we could kind of take a quick look and give some quick feedback, and we thought we could do that on the fly. Happy to work through the chat today, or start with questions, whatever it is that's useful to you. We're here for you. So we're all part of the friends and family plan now. Any free advice or anything we can help with, we're happy to do.
Where are the candidates?
There's a small island just off the coast of...
They're serving free umbrella drinks.
It's interesting. I saw some stats on the labor market, and for most age groups, employment's back to kind of where it was, before the pandemic. But man, we're all fighting over the 3 people who are actually answering ads, right? So we're all in a collective foot race to find the people who are looking, and candidate behavior's changed pretty fair amount from say 2019, which was also a competitive job market. So it's interesting how people are able to indulge in a slight preference of, I slightly prefer 2 days in the office instead of 3, or slightly prefer this title over that, or they've got options and they all know they have options, and they're willing to change jobs with less provocation than they used to. So we're able to actually talk to more people these days than we used to be able to. But man, through the interview sequence, people say, I don't really want the second interview, right? Or that was a nice offer, thanks, I really appreciate that, but maybe I'll stay where I am. So interesting times in the job market. You're all seeing the same thing, I'm sure.
We're fighting for candidates more, either they have other offers, or, even the ones, we have a couple that have been in their jobs for a long time, and it's hard to convince them to leave. But yeah, our turnover is still pretty good, but we're having a harder time getting people to accept offers. And because they have multiple offers coming in, and I find where, I don't know if the market data just isn't up to snuff, but we're offering more, we're adding a sign-on bonus, we even changed the title recently. So it's just been, I feel like we're constantly jumping through hoops, and I don't, know how long I can get approvals to do all that. But I think we are biotech, and we use Radford, and I don't, the data is just not up to date, I don't think. So I think that's one of the things I have to take into account.
Yeah, and salary surveys are always a year behind because just the nature of how the data is collected, right? But that year, man, the data aged really fast. Like it's like milk, trying to hit 50th percentile on new hires or things like that. It's getting harder.
Yeah.
And every candidate seems to know the inflation rate.
Pretty
right?
clearly. Yeah. And Jill, actually, Bob and I were just talking about that some of the techniques we're doing is at, pretty early in the sequence, talking about counter offers, because a lot of candidates are getting counter offers. That used to be once in a while. You can almost count on that pretty much now. So we start to bring up the counter offer and why are you really leaving, almost encouraging them, but not really encouraging them, but to think through why they would take the position. Because when they get the counter offer, you want them to think, is this something that I could have gotten, should have asked for, et cetera. And then really having backup candidates in the pipeline in case those fall through, and really managing the offer process pretty closely, pretty fast, offer letters ready to go, all of that stuff, because you're kind of in a foot race and you have to be sure that they think this is the best thing for them, obviously being considerate that they might have other options, and to really think that through. And I find that helps get to the finish line. So definitely candidate management, probably midway through to the end, always from the beginning to the end, but very close candidate management at about second round is really needed.
I think talking about benefits up front helps a lot too. I feel like that's another trend I've noticed is candidates are asking a lot earlier in the process about really kind of specific details, not only about paid time off, but 401k match, all of it. So if you can't play, the flexibility card or the salary is pretty locked, the benefit conversation earlier on helps a lot too with that candidate management piece that Aileen had brought up.
And you'd mentioned where are the candidates in the first place. So looking at that from a sourcing perspective, the more transparency you can provide from the very beginning with your job descriptions and your position overviews, the better, because they're going to have these questions, like Lily said, and the earlier you can get to that and show what you're offering, that's going to help.
Aileen, what are you seeing that helps people to better? We actually just had the conversation, I think it wasn't it last week, Samantha, we were talking about counteroffers and about how half the time when someone takes a counteroffer and they stay, they're not really going to be a long-term employee anyway. They're not going to stay for that much longer. What do you typically advise them? And are you seeing a lot of people that are actually taking the counteroffers?
More people are taking the counteroffers, I think, because I think than I have noticed in the past. So to answer that question, and I think some of it is just getting in front of it. So I have a note here that says benefits and counteroffer. So I make sure that I talk to every candidate about that pretty early on, because I don't know, first of all, I don't think that candidates were getting counteroffers at the rate they are now. So more people are getting counteroffers. So your likelihood of people accepting them has gone up. I have articles that I send, one Bob wrote, and we're looking to update some of those as well. And I basically tell people, I'm pretty candid about it. If you would consider a counteroffer, don't put in your notice, because the reason you're leaving is not the reason why they're countering for, to have you. And these are things you probably should discuss with them in advance, and you're probably leaving for different reasons. So that's for you to think through. Here's some articles. But once you give your notice, your relationship with your employer changes, and they're probably no longer going to consider you for special projects or promotions and things like that. And pretty much in 6 months, you're going to be calling me and telling me that you made a mistake. So I'm pretty candid and upfront about it, because I really don't want to go all the way down, get a counter offer, everyone's happy, and then they stay for, usually it's money. Once in a while, it might be, hey, we'll let you work from 4 days a week or something. They go ahead and it's a lifestyle, and the person never really wanted to leave. To that end, some of it is about that stuff. I had a colleague of mine say that basically it was asking her for a counter, said, hey, I'm going to this new place. I got a title increase. I got a salary increase, and they're going to let me, work from home more, but I really don't know if I want to go there. And so, I think candidates are looking for counters too, in some cases. So I think just getting in front of it pretty early on is, and sharing benefits and talking about it shouldn't be about money. It should be about the opportunity.
I'm finding that when we extend offers, candidates are, trying to extend offers, I should say, candidates are taking their very sweet time calling me back because they're buying time for whatever else they have in the pipeline, which I have not experienced in a very, very long time.
Yeah, that's also happening. And a lot of times as the in-between person, they'll tell me that. They'll say, hey, I have a couple opportunities here. I'd like to wait. And again, I don't want to talk anybody into a job. So I mean, I could probably get a yes out of anyone, but that's not what my goal is. My goal is to get somebody in to stay. So a lot of times I'll say, well, you probably want to sit down and write down why you're leaving, which opportunities are short-term, long-term, meet the needs, and figure that out. I tell them I'm happy to be a sounding board because I will not talk someone into a job, and just sort of talk through what are the pluses and minuses. And sometimes, honestly, I think they take the job because somebody engaged with them faster than the other place. And that reflects how your organization is, and they feel good about that. So if you get that offer letter to them right away, if you deliver on all your promises that you said, you said, well, we can increase your leave, you get it right in the offer letter, update it, get it right over to them. That goes a long way. But yes, they are. Samantha, they are taking their time. That's why you want backup candidates if you can. You got to feel really good about number 2 and take them all the way to the end.
Just put something in the chat of a podcast I just listened to. Mercifully brief podcast, right? But it was the ghosting, right? The people either not showing up first day of work or, right? Now, employers have been ghosting candidates since forever, right? Oh, here's your first interview on them. And I meant to get back to you, but the manager never got back to me, and it was a little slow. And it was a month later until I came back and said, hey, come in for the second interview. So candidates feel a little ghosted by some employers. Mm-hmm. I'm sure nobody here would do that, but other employers. And so this was about employees ghosting employers. And by ghosting, it's not just declining to advance, it's just not showing up for an interview or that sort of thing. And they went into the why. They surveyed a bunch of people who had ghosted an organization. And it was, in some cases, the employer represented the job to be something the job actually wasn't, right? In some cases, it was the employer not keeping in touch through the sequence, right? Teach for America is probably the most impressive organization I've seen, where they make an offer and then there's just this constant flow of connectivity to the employee before they start, right? Team members reaching out, hey, let's send something to your house, maybe some Teach for America swag. I have no idea what the things are, but this like touch points every few days between when they said they were going to start and when they actually start. So it's this kind of heightened need to reassure, be transparent, be in touch, take nothing for granted, even after they've said yes to the offer, let alone through the hiring sequence. And so as employers get not more desperate, but more keenly interested in candidates, right? There are other organizations that are kind of spending more time doing that stuff. And it's not like you guys are made out of time. I have no idea how you find time to do any of this, but you're just in that foot race of anybody you want to hire, somebody else probably does too, right? So,
and I often am waiting on updates from clients, and I'm sure you're waiting on updates from hiring managers. So I pretty routinely will send an update to a candidate that says, hey, I just wanted to let you know that I've reached out, I'm waiting on an update, I'll let you know as soon as I have one. I call it the no update. I have nothing to update them, and they appreciate it. And it's a very basic, you could even put it as a, quick step in your Outlook and just click on it. At Fridays, I hate letting candidates go into the weekend not knowing where they stand. And so it might just be a quick, like I said, a no update, and they just appreciate that you reached out and know that they're still around. And it if you make a quick step, it takes seconds of your time, but it can mean a lot to a candidate. Even if they're your runner up, because you never know, they might be your front runner by Monday.
I know previously when working with you guys and as an agency, do you guys still provide any type of guarantee period? I know that staffing agencies, when you do temp to perms, a lot of times do, and I believe you guys had in the past. Do you guys still do that? And if you do, or have you shortened it from what it used to be?
So we have an 18-month unconditional guarantee on placements. We don't do temp to perm, but for direct hire. So a year and a half from the time they start, right? And
I want to ask how that's been going.
Anybody else wanna? Okay, I'll take it.
That's saying a word.
So full
something we've been talking a lot about.
Can I hit my head with a brick instead of answering this? So,
well, before you answered though, if I'm correct, and again, Samantha, I don't mean to keep picking on you, but you had mentioned, didn't you say that you talked to some agencies that like they no longer even have a guarantee period? Or it was like 30 days?
I can't remember who it was. There's somebody who was a contingent firm that's no longer fully contingent. They're like partial contingent, partial retained. It was like a really weird fee structure. And I was like, guess I'm not using you guys anymore. Now it's different. And full disclosure, I'm currently engaged with staffing advisors for a position that they are working with us on. But that's a different scenario because that's like it's a more senior level position, which again, I have no problem paying a routine fee for. Because we're going to them for a specific reason. But for my run-of-the-mill, like administrative assistant positions, I won't lie, I have a really hard time with the idea of swallowing a retainer for that's just me. But I also I'm now chuckling because I am appreciating that my contract with you all is 18 months.
Yep.
So Bob, now I will turn it back to you to say how you guys are doing with that 18 months, which is a great benefit.
So it's 18-month unconditional from start date. We're not going to change it. We didn't hesitate because the plain fact is in a lot of jobs, it takes a year to even figure out if the person's really going to cut it. And at a 1 year point, you're really holding their feet to the fire in the performance review often. And so it just takes 18 months. The director, VP, C-suite, CEO, it takes years, right? But and we've upped our CEO guarantee to 2 years, right? So, so we actually went the other way. We actually upped the CEO guarantee because a year and a half isn't enough to really assess performance in many cases. And we haven't changed our 18-month, but our 18-month retention rate is stinko. It used to be 90, 91% at 18 months, right? And it's not like people are failing to a larger degree than they used to, but at like the 1 year point, it's easier to skate out of there. It's easier just to say, I'm going to take something else. We have a lot of candidates who have succeeded in their roles who have opted to go somewhere else inside of the 18 months. And so our fail rate isn't any worse, but our stick around rate is slipping. And truth be told, that we don't have enough time in this market to know how bad it's going to be, but I'm guessing we're going to drop south of 80, maybe even down to 70% at the 18-month point. I don't know where the numbers are going to fully shake out after we have 18 months of a market this good. So we're doing a pilot experiment with Liz Scott at Brighter Strategies to let's look at retention, right? We're doing a pilot project with NFP, the benefits broker, to take a look and say, let's benchmark benefits. We've long since had a relationship with Keating Advisors to do compensation surveys and try to be current there, right? So we're trying to bring all these tools to our clients. But I think we're gonna, as a search firm, we're gonna have a pretty unimpressive 18-month retention rate in this market. And I bet we're looking at it for another year of ugly retention. And it's not people failing, it's people just choosing something else. And I can't tell you the joy it gives me to share that, PJ.
Painful.
Maybe I can, Jill, did you have a question?
No, I just said that's painful.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of us are just in a different way. I mean, it's being able to hold on to the employees that we have had for a while and being able to hold on to them. So another question that comes up so often is, where are you finding that you're not able to do, and I think we have talked about this before, but you're not doing the normal, let's do let's post it here on Indeed and post on these other sites, that it is more all about the sourcing and I can't remember what you guys, the Google searches that you talked about. Are those still as beneficial in finding candidates versus the more traditional ways of doing it?
I throw that one to you, Kim.
Yep. So yeah, we are still, our candidate outreach is still incredibly helpful for us in generating our candidate pools. We couldn't build them without it. Like Bob said, we're getting more people to talk to from advertising, but it is not necessarily resulting in more viable candidates. So because of all the reasons we've been talking about, people having options and looking at other places. So within our candidate outreach strategy, there's definitely, I'm having to reach out to more people to be able to get full pools of candidates. But we are still seeing people engage with us for sure. And we're getting a lot of good candidates through that method.
Anybody have a job you'd like to ask questions about that you're having a hard time filling?
I actually have a question about the candidate outreach.
Mm-hmm.
I am working for a very mission-driven organization, and we have a lot of fundraiser or development roles. And in your experience, do you find that doing candidate outreach is as effective in finding people who are going to be bought into the mission of the organization to do the roles versus more the referral method or people just directly applying?
I can take this.
Yeah, I was going to say, first or second, which one do you want?
I think in any candidate pool, you want to do the direct recruiting that Kim does. You want to do the advertising and referrals, but for mission driven, specifically for development, they need, that really comes down to your message. The message has to be good because they need to feel like they can come in and sell your organization. They want to see that they have a track to run on. They want to see that there's a mission. They have things to talk about. They want to be able to identify with the mission, but a lot of development people can identify with a lot of different missions, but they need to really be able to see that. Development's always been hard to recruit, and it's not changed now. And that's one of the positions that a lot of people are recruiting for right now. There's a couple of themes. I feel like government relations was kind of hot a month ago. I haven't really checked into it this month, but development, government relations, I think I'm going to say probably marketing and sales type stuff is really, really hot right now. So there's a lot of people looking for it. There's a lot of options for people, but Bob can probably better articulate about the message, but we spend a lot of time on when we're recruiting for a development job on the message and showing that person can come in and be successful, because while people have been burned by development people have been burned by organizations. So I don't know, Bob, you can probably articulate that better than I did.
Not really. What she said.
I actually had also a development related question, so that pretty much sums it up. But the other thing that we're back in the office now, at least 3 days a week, and we actually had to move during the pandemic, so that was awesome too.
Oh.
But we were able to get a build out in brand new space. So we, with the LEED gold building, so we have more COVID safety here, and the design is all aligned with things we would have had to fix that we had more space, but it would have been awkward not having people side by side. So that's the good part. And people like the space, even though they kicking and screaming coming back to work. But we also have been, just as you said, marketing. We've been having a devil of a time trying to get someone in our web development role in marketing. It's easy to get people who are who are interested in being consultants, but it's difficult to find people who have the marketing background, the communication background, and also have the skills. And so, do you all have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, do you have a position overview that you could put in the chat? We can take a look and make some suggestions.
Sure.
Or if you want, Patricia, I can give you access to screen share. That would be easier.
Let's see if I can stick it in there right here. Let's see what happens. How do I attach it? A PDF? Is it possible to do that?
Yep. If you go to in the chat down at the bottom, the 3 little dots to the right of the smiley face icon, across from where the names are. If you click on that, it should give you access. It doesn't, does it? Oh, wait a minute, the file. God, I'm sorry. The little piece of paper looking thing.
Look at that.
Yeah. Sorry. Well, I've been doing this for 2 years, you know.
All right.
I appreciate nobody correcting me, though, as I was trying to direct her.
Well, if I knew, I wouldn't have asked. So there you go. We're all learning every day. Let's see. Screen is very small.
So in general, I'll just vamp for time here while you get your thing connected. But so communications people, development people, they're really hypersensitive to a message that resonates almost at an emotional level. And for development professionals, it's like, can I go make this pitch? Can I make this case for support, right? So messaging people are highly receptive to messaging, right? So it's not just, do you have a good job? Does it pay well? And all that kinds of stuff. It almost has to strike an emotional chord in your outreach. And then you have to have all the other stuff done. Let me see if I can open this up and see if we can.
Learn a new skill.
All right. I cannot open it. Bob, were you able to?
I can save it. I'm just trying to get it off my.
Yeah, it's trying to get me to save it.
Save for me. Well, maybe it did.
I can open. That's kind of unusual.
On there.
You get it? I got it.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. Here we go.
And Bob, I just made you a co-host if you want to share it.
Give me 1 second.
Now we get to see if he knows how to do that.
I have it. You want me to share the screen, PJ? Is that what you're?
Yeah, you can. That way I figured it'd be easier. Just a suggestion. It works.
Yep. Got it.
Yeah, Aileen, I don't have to be competent.
You Brooke. Any chance you can make that bigger for the old people eyes?
Well, let's see. Is that no different? That's not no different, is it?
Oh, scroll the other way. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, 3 pages. I was trying to zoom in and I scrolled down, so that was not.
All right, so
this is actually the abbreviated version that went on our website. So there's a different section that goes in that talks about our mission and the work expectations, and the fact that we have our annual conference over Memorial Day weekend.
So yeah, so the why is elsewhere. It's not in this shortened version, right? The why do this, why come here.
Yes.
Why take this role, right?
Right.
the big chunks are website content, design, development. I love that you have the percentages of where do you spend your time. That's incredibly helpful. Candidates love that. When you know, sometimes you don't know, but when you do know, it's super helpful. Do you have a sense of the size of the team, who you work with? Like, is it a team of 2 or 20?
Oh, it's a small team, but there's a lot of cross-departmental dependencies. The marketing and membership team is about 5 right now.
Sometimes having people get a sense of the size of the team can be helpful, right? And Kim, Aileen, anything else you see just off the top of your head on that one?
No, I think if I were to do a scaled down version, I would maybe scale out some of the responsibilities, maybe hit the high buckets and put the mission back in, particularly for marketing,
Right.
those type of jobs. I mean, the thing is, somebody has to, in order to leave, if they're not looking, you have to have something compelling for them to go to. So people like challenges, they like growth, they like, not everyone likes challenges. The people, if there's a challenge there and they like that, then you want to talk about that, because they might come there for the challenge. Some people like to go and build things if you're trying to centralize marketing, or so if this person comes in and does a good job, you'll have, your mission will be met in different ways. You can grow, all those things that get people excited about the work versus like just putting a job description. A lot of people just put job descriptions out there. You want to talk about, it really is an advertisement. It's really a marketing itself. And so what they can expect, who they're going to work with, what some of the impact they're going to have, people will, oh gosh, I can come in here and help more members, or have direct service to more people, or grow my career, and so forth. So I think that that's really how to attract people. And then once you get them on the phone, you can give them a longer version. So if they want to see the nitty gritty details, get into, why they would want this role, and, gain enthusiasm for the position. That's really how, when you get to the end, that's why they take your job.
Right, especially when if the alternative you suggested, I think that many people are looking for contract work instead of full-time employment. Was that it?
So
that they prefer to be contractors?
So this is yes and no. And actually, I've been working with an agency for some of our contract work. And part of that is the reality is that contractors don't want to be employees, and employees don't necessarily want to be contractors.
Right.
And so that's where trying to help the hiring manager understand, yes, this contractor is really good, and that's why we hired this person, because they could jump in and do it.
Mm-hmm.
But no, they're not an inside cat. They're not going to be interested in working for just you. And for something like marketing, you're really giving away your trade secrets to somebody who's building a portfolio by expanding, linking together the different experiences, and never really wants to be in a desk job, and doesn't need the collaboration other than the information that they need. So it's a different creature.
Right.
And Kim, what do you think about the requirements, Drupal and CSS, and how does that pair with the content development? Are you seeing people with?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see anything about that looks incongruent somehow. 3 years of experience. Yeah, Aileen, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, that strikes me as reasonable.
Yeah. And I would say this actually made me think of some things like there, and Bob, you probably know this better than I do, but like when you're looking at diversity and candidates and things like that, when you put in a lot of those things, some people will feel like they have to meet every requirement. So if you list 10 requirements, particularly women, I think Bob has read all these things. You might have a better statistics, but they think, I don't have Drupal, I'm not going to apply. And so you got to be really careful about, talking about it or writing it or saying it's a plus, or we'll provide training. And I tell candidates on the flip side, I do webinars and I say, clients always have a laundry list, I call it, of things they want. If you're in the zone, apply. They will work with you on this. They might be able to provide training, but some people really do. What you want to avoid is people self-selecting out because of a requirement you put on there that you don't really need. You just listed everything that the person will do.
So a couple of quick things. The research that's been done is that women will tend to apply only when they meet a higher threshold than men. Something about false confidence of men or something, anyway. And there's a theory, but I haven't seen research on it, that other, candidates from traditionally disadvantaged backgrounds or traditionally, so the only research I've seen is men versus women. But the theory is be more inclusive. And I think Nicole's thing in the chat here is awesome.
Yeah, I like that.
That's really good.
Nicole, where did that come from? Like, what prompted you guys to do that?
I was part of a group during the pandemic, actually. We met every Wednesday, and we were talking about our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and how we could show in our job postings our commitment to it. And so we changed, instead of having, that standard, well, we do have right above it, we're an equal opportunity employer, we prohibit discrimination or harassment, but it wasn't enough for us. And so we wanted to add, that statement as well, so that you could tell by reading our descriptions. I mean, one, we put at the top of all of our postings, job level, job location, type of property, type of position, and the pay at the very top, because we don't want to waste anybody's time. And we want to be very transparent with people. And then after you read through the responsibilities and the benefits, then at the bottom, we have that statement. So hopefully they get to the bottom and read that statement. The more I think about it, maybe we should move it to the top.
But if you're in it, if you're from a traditionally underrepresented background, right, you're making a calculation. Is this going to be worth my time? Do I have a shot, right? I have 10 other things I could do with my time, right? And applying to your job is just one of 52 things I want to do right now, right? This week, today, whatever. So what is it that has people feel like you'll give them the time of day? You'll give them fair consideration, right? And how do you convey that? It could be on your career page. It could be in your job postings. It could be, but how do you consistently convey, please consider this, it'll be worth your time? And I'll tell you, when we're doing direct recruiting, when Kim is reaching out, she's identified hundreds of candidates and we're reaching out, it's often the second or third outreach to the candidate that they say, oh, you really did want to talk to me. It's not just a cattle call, right? Oh, you're serious about talking to me. Okay, then it's probably worth my time. I thought you were just running up the numbers or something. I thought, whatever I thought, right? So people are all trying to kind of look at your job postings with, are you going to waste my time, right? And the plain fact is, everybody you don't hire kind of ends up feeling that way at the end, right? So after you apply to a few things and you come in second or third or fifth or seventh, it can feel like, should I just like go to the grocery store instead of applying to this ad? Should I just run an errand, right?
Do you find that your clients are getting pickier too? Like candidates want it all, but the companies want it all too? I
think anytime you pay a search firm a fee, you're going to be pretty picky, and you should be, right? It's like, how do you justify that horrifically high fee? But the other thing is, like, your hiring managers are under enormous pressure to get a lot done with very little everything. And, you know, the hit the ground running and the whatever. I mean, your teams are, when you're hiring, you're understaffed, right? So I get the pressure to get somebody who can be successful. And the thing that we always try to do with our people we're working with on hiring is like what really matters. Usually in any given job, there's 5 or 6 things that really matter. There's 12 things you'd love to see, but there's 5 or 6 that really matter, right? And the more you can focus on a handful of key competencies, it might be 4, it might be 6, I don't know. But you know, if the candidate can demonstrate the ability to be successful in the interview, you know, work sample testing, do some work in the interview, like the work you do on the job. But if you can really see that they can do that, then sometimes you can slip away with, okay, maybe you don't need a doctorate, maybe a master's degree. Okay, maybe you don't need be bilingual. You could, you know, or maybe you could trade off this because the 4 or 5 things that really matter are in abundance or evident. And, you know, so it's tough when you're the hiring manager because there's like 24 things you want. And then there's usually 5 or 6 really deal breaker things that's, that makes sense. But it's tough getting down to those 5 or 6 things. Tough. And sometimes in this market, you're even trading some of those.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to trade rigor. You still want to have a rigorous process. You don't want to be desperate. You don't want to hire the wrong candidate because that just means you're going to hire again in the pretty near future. But if you can think flexibly with inside the rigor, what I mean by that is look at candidates from backgrounds you maybe didn't initially consider. Open the door a little bit so that you can let some really good candidates are sometimes the ones that you didn't think were good looking at them on paper, or they just had something. And so but again, you don't have time for this, but I try to be broad in who I will consider and let in the door, and then have a conversation just to see if it can go further. If you feel like you can do that, do it in small bites, you know, do it 10, 15-minute calls or something. If there's someone that you're just not sure about, 10, 15 minutes, talk to them. You might be surprised by some of the people you can include for a further conversation, and just commit to that 10 minutes or 15 minutes. It might open up your candidate pool a bit wider without scheduling an hour interview and spending a lot of time with the wrong people.
We have managers who are particularly like, it's got to be that they went to Princeton because I went to Princeton, right? Moving them from like, you don't have to commit an hour, commit a smaller chunk of time. Often managers will surprise themselves with how much they'll appreciate a candidate from a background that the manager never considered. Like, I never even thought about somebody with that background being qualified, but they appear to be. So let's spend some more time with them, right? Look, all your questions have been answered.
I do think, to Samantha's point, I do find that it seems like, and this is all through COVID, and I won't use the word pickier, but I think a lot of times you get through 2 rounds and get to an offer. And I feel like sometimes there's that 3rd round wanted. And I think it's because everything's on Zoom. So it seems like what is going faster, it's also going slower at the same time. So that was one observation I've had over the last couple of years.
Question about what we're posting. I post a lot just from an HR perspective on the HR Roundtable website, and a lot of the information, a lot of the descriptions we get are very long with lots of here, you know, all the different things that we want the individuals to do. Is that harming or helping us to have more information out there versus a shorter version of it, or candidates now, do they really want to see all of that information?
Kim, didn't you just talk to the 23rd new vendor contact we have somewhere about that very same topic?
Yeah, so every job board will tell you the shorter your description, the more response you're going to get. And LinkedIn actually shared some data with me. It's the first instance I've had of it, someone doing a study on it. They have found that the shorter job descriptions get more attention, and because people are typically scrolling on their phones, you know, they're scrolling a few times, and if they have to go more than a few times, they're giving up and they're done. So at the very least, make sure that you're beginning of your description is really compelling, because you might not get them to your second page or your third page. But I mean, there is some theory out there that putting that information, you want the details to be accessible, but putting it on your website and pointing them to a website or something like that could be a better use of your real estate rather than putting it in job descriptions. And that's something we're talking about, how to incorporate that feedback. It's kind of tricky.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes it depends on the job.
Yeah.
You know, accounting people don't want to read a lot, writers might.
Well, like you said, I mean, for some positions like fundraising and development, mission of the organization is really important, and you want to spend time talking about that. For some other types of positions, candidates really don't care. They're more interested in the position itself. So spending time talking about mission of the organization is not what's going to reel that person in.
Right.
You have to, it's audience specific as well.
Yeah. So PJ, we always start with I don't want to use the word start, but in early on, we consider the candidate's viewpoint. Like if I were an accounting or a finance person, what would I want to know? I'd want to know how many millions, how many staff, where the money comes from, that kind of thing. I might care a little bit about the mission, but to a lesser degree. I might want to go there and do this same work because I like the mission, but I want to know all these other things first. So a lot of times just think about, if I were an HR professional, which you are, what would you want to know? You want to hit those buckets. If you're looking for an HR person. For marketing, you want to hit those buckets. What do marketing people like? They like a good message, they like a good mission, they like to have a team or outsource or whatever. So and those are the things that really are important, along with, some of the highlights of what they'll be doing.
Kim also brought up an interesting point, which I don't know if everybody thinks about. I know I don't necessarily instantly think about it, but I guess it makes sense that more people are looking at all of their, looking at everything on their phone first versus it being on a computer. Are there other things we should be thinking about when it pops up on a phone? I don't know if there's anything we can do anything about, but just a question as to, are there any other particulars that you've been told that because it is on a phone, make sure you have A, B, or C there?
Yeah, so making it as easy to apply as possible. So the more, I think we've talked about this before, the more hoops you create, the more chance you're giving people to get bored and move on to something else, or they're going to come back and do it later and they never do. So if you have an easy way for them to apply, or an easy way to attach a resume, or just making sure that that's all something that you could do pretty easily from a phone, and that you wouldn't feel like you need to go back to a computer. So you've got a bigger screen to be able to see where the buttons are, and how do I attach this, and all that sort of thing. So just making sure the process is pretty clean is helpful. And then, like you said, making sure that your benefits information is easily accessible, or that it stands out. If you're choosing to include salary, that's somewhere that's easy to find, and that they're not having to dig through all of the wording to get to that important information that they're looking for.
Well, let me come at this a slightly different direction, which is people want to know they can be successful with the resources you have. They want to know they can be successful with your mission. They want to know that if they came to you, are they like swimming upstream, or are they swimming downstream? Like, is everything stacked against them or in place to help them be successful, right? So I put a little thing in the chat about, a top performer is somebody who can be successful with the resources and constraints your organization has, right? So finance people want to know, hey, were your audits clean, and are you financially strong, right? HR people are like, is everybody quitting, or what, how's morale, or like what's going on with your people, or, so everybody's got a different thing. Development people are, do you have a message I can deliver, right? Is that a message I could see myself, being the messenger for, right? So everybody's got a different thing they're looking for in a job. And so if you're trying to get a top performer, they want to know how much you have stacked up to help them be successful, right? So that means a different, maybe first 3 paragraphs by functional area, right? Like IT people want What toys? What's your latest software? What are you working with? What kind of productivity tools, right? So everybody's got their different thing that they kind of resonate to. And the more you can convey that in the first few paragraphs, our internal debate, PJ, back to your question of how long should the job ad be? I tend to go longer. Aileen doesn't like to read as much as I like to read, and she tends to go shorter. Kim talks to all the different vendors and says, what evidence do the vendors have for one versus another, right? So like the vendors will tell you in general, do whatever, and then we'll say, but how do our ads perform relative to everybody else's ads? Oh, you're outperforming. Well, it's longer, but it's outperforming. So what's the guidance, right? So it's really hard to know. It's really hard to know. Would you hear 150 words, Kim, from somebody? Did somebody say that?
Yeah, that was a recommendation I heard recently, and I asked them to show me example of a high performing ad at 150 words, and I am yet to see that example.
Well, that was funny too, because in that same data, it's at 150 words. It said, but make sure you also include your mission, and you also include details about what they're doing, and you also include, and how are you supposed to include all of that in 150 words?
Not possible.
Yeah.
I have a question. When you talk about ensuring that the applying method is as easy as possible, is the idea of a cover letter archaic at this point? Or...
Well, there's hot button number 2 with our internal team.
Well, you know where I stand on that one with the reading.
I love cover letters. I love them. They're awesome, and I don't ask for them, because if it's a hard to fill position and you think you're going to have a struggle to get enough people to apply, don't ask for what you won't get, right? Don't put another barrier to applying. Now, I tell candidates, if you're doing a career change or there's anything a little not mainstream about your application, right, you're going to have a cover letter to explain why you're changing industries or why you're doing whatever, right? But the plain fact is, in this market, you're not going to get them. So,
well, and I think
keep asking, you know.
I think sometimes we put requirements or things to weed people out, and if you're getting a lot of people, then do that. But if you're not, you want to do the reverse.
Well, and Samantha has a good point here, the ditto on the writing samples at the application stage. And I think the important part of that is at the application stage. You can ask for all sorts of things. Once you've started a conversation, you're taking somebody to an interview and you want to make sure you're fully vetting people. But at the point of application, you're just putting up another barrier.
And Google, I think you've all heard, they used to do the brain teasers of solve an equation or some crazy thing. And the head of Google HR years ago completely disavowed it and said, this didn't matter at all in our hiring. And they'd have like, how many golf balls fit inside of a 747? Mm-hmm. Let's just see if the candidate can, and he came back and said, that's embarrassing. I wish we'd never started. It was an ego trip for the hiring manager. It did nothing to predict success on the job.
Any other questions that you guys might have?
Any secrets for entry-level professional HR people to talk them into coming back? Tell them they're not going to be the school nurse.
Right. Wow.
The change in the HR job market is unbelievable.
Very different.
Man, I wish I had something to tell you.
I am very grateful because I am on the executive management team and I have a high integrity CEO. And so 2 years of salary freezes, I know I don't want to go for somebody desperate who will promise me anything and feel like a bad job quickly. So I'm just, and it's a mission issue too. So, but yeah, trying to get more entry level people. I feel like I need to 3D print them or something.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Do you know how to do that?
Cloning machine. I didn't think about it. I should have moved on from the cloning machine to the 3D printing.
Yeah, we did a couple HR positions not that long ago. Definitely saw the change. And, you know, you used to be HR, you put it up and you were flooded with just a ridiculous amount of response. And this time around, it was not the same thing in any way, shape, or form. I think the one thing that I kind of saw reoccurring throughout all of those searches was they really wanted to know how they would be supported and how they could grow, knowing that they were entry level and kind of where the key buckets of time were, but what their onboarding ramp looked like, what the projection was for their support and their growth within the company. You know, of course, the benefits and flexibility, all that stuff kind of came into it afterwards, but those were a lot of the conversations that initially kicked off. So I think having something around kind of, you know, if the position really is like a springboard for their career, what they're going to learn while they're there would probably be helpful in the job description versus all the fun different things that they have to do, but kind of more what you're willing to support and what kind of supports you already have in place for them.
They will learn perseverance.
A little grit, as I call it. And I think the one thing that's always been true with HR is HR wants to know they have a seat at the table, at least at the CEO, you know, supports HR and the function. And so I think, you know, obviously this person, you know, entry level isn't going to be straight to the CEO, but I think that culture of that HR is an important function, important to the board, important to the CEO, important to employees. I think that always pushes you to the front, because that's something that my experience, HR people, that's again, back to thinking about who you have in mind. That's super important to HR professionals.
I'm trying to pull somebody out of retirement.
Good luck with that.
Well, are we seeing so much more of that? People are either boomeranging, going back to prior employers, or you're trying to get people to come back because you just can't find those candidates again. Yeah. Are you guys seeing a lot of boomerang? I don't know how much you might see that. Are you seeing people that perhaps they're going back might be harder, I guess, with kind of the way you guys work?
We're hearing of candidates who talk to Aileen or Lily and then go back to a prior employer, right? We've seen a few of those.
You're talking about retirement boomerang?
More, we're hearing that there are quite a few just people in the market who will take another job and be gone and not be gone for all that long and then turn around and go back because they're like, yeah, you know what? Maybe the pay was better here, but the benefits were so much better where I was. Yeah, or there was something that takes them back.
Yeah. I saw an article, I almost shared it, except it wasn't a very good article, about 3/4 of people regret taking the new thing that they thought would be better, where the grass was not greener, and they went back, right? The interesting thing about both counteroffers and the boomerang, like employers taking you back, is employers couldn't fill the job fast enough. So it was still open 3, 4, 5, 6 months later. And the candidate was looking pretty good about the time that they were kind of sick of the new place. There's a book on the shelf back here, The Enthusiastic Employee, that says, you know, most people start a job pretty enthusiastic, pretty upbeat about it. And then in about 6 months, they say, oh, this place has a lot of challenges that look difficult, right? And their enthusiasm drops at about the 6-month point. Well, if the old employer hasn't filled the job in 6 months, reel them back in. So if y'all lost somebody who was pretty good 6 months ago, good time to go fishing, see if you can reel them back in. So yeah, boomerang's a thing. That has to do with employers being less resistant to, you know, counteroffers and bringing people back, right? Has to do with it's harder to find new people, and has to do with, look, we're 52 years into this pandemic. People are tired, right? They're exhausted. Work is hard. You're understaffed. You're under budgeted. The challenges are real, and you're expected to do amazing things. And so you're vaguely dissatisfied, right? And your boss, maybe you could get slightly better. Maybe you get a slightly better return to office policy. Maybe you could get whatever. And so here you have a bunch of people vaguely dissatisfied, right? Vaguely like, well, I'd consider something new if it was great, but I don't really know what great looks like. And in an interview, you don't always find out everything you'd love to find out about that employer, right? And so you see this kind of behavior of maybe I could do better. Oh, this wasn't really better. Maybe something else is better. And I think we're going to see like a year of people kind of, you know, I've been teaching my kids, I've been working too hard, I've been doing 3 jobs, I've been, you know, whatever. I think we're going to see candidates don't uniformly know how to find what's better, right? So what do we do as employers to A, get them not to quit, or B, bring them back if they did quit, or, right? I think that's the market we're in. It's brutal, right?
Well, if you left just because you're like, well, I want to work remote, and you go somewhere to work remote and you didn't think about the work or the mission or who you'd be working with and the resources, which is why we try to have these conversations a little bit earlier on, like, why are you looking to leave? What is it? Because if you just went somewhere so that you could be remote, you might just be unhappy, you know, because it's the whole package. And I think some candidates have forgotten it's the whole package. They're seeking 1 or 2 things, and that's what they focused on, and not the whole picture, which may mean they might have to go into the office 1 extra day, but it's maybe a really great job for them long term. So, and then the balance is back to the employers, where how far do you bend? Do you just offer remote to everyone? Well, no, that's not what everyone wants to do and shouldn't do if you can't. So it's a complicated shift back and forth. And
all this stuff just makes the HR job even harder, right? It's just,
yeah, it's a lot.
Jobs is.
You can talk forever about HR. I was going to say, Jill.
I wanted to go back to HR hiring, and what we actually did this year is we hired an HR intern. We looked on Handshake, which is a college recruiting website, and we had a couple of, we screened like 5 candidates, and the candidate we got is like, she's getting a master's in organizational development. She's working for us 20 to 30 hours a week. She's actually contributing, and we're trying to make sure she gets included in other things that we do so that she's learning and being able to, feel useful. And I don't know, our company's growing so fast, by the time she's ready, we might have a job for her. And that was in lieu of trying to find a contract recruiter at this point in time with biotech background. So from something that was going to cost me like $80,000, a quarter or whatever, or half a year, I have an intern that we're paying $20 an hour who's fabulous, so maybe we're just lucky, but we had several candidates that we screened, and 2 went to the interview process, and we hired 1.
That's great.
So if you're looking for entry level, that might be a place to look.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you so much. And I certainly want to be cognizant of everyone's time. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us today. Staffing advisors, you guys, Bob, you and your team are great to join us to just kind of answer questions. Can't tell you how much we appreciate it. And everybody else, I know how challenging it is. It will, at some point, it will definitely get better. In the meantime, we're here to try to help in any way that we can. And I hope everybody has a great rest of the day today. Know that you guys are doing a great job, and hope to see everybody later this week. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, PJ.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.